Hell of a Night by C.J. Quinn. Shall we begin? It was late at night when we started our journey, and as we made our way to where it supposedly once happened. The moon hung in the sky, like an ornament of light, glaring through the cloudy air, glimmering off the dew dripping from the leaves all around us. It was All Hallows Eve, the crisp leaves falling one by one from the withering trees. The weather sent a cold chill through the air, sharp snaps of wind swirling as they gathered clusters of leaves, as the autumn colour palette of orange, yellow and reds danced into the sky. Halloween decorations scattered mercilessly house to house, webbing the town in an exciting and colourful atmosphere as people roamed the streets as ghouls and ghosts trick-or-treating. Pumpkins lit the streets as their carved faces watched on with flickering intent. The clouds in the sky hid whatever stars may be lying behind them, and only the moon showed itself with a gloomy shine. Halloween was alive. A time of year we loved, and in our town everyone went all out to celebrate the occasion. But with Halloween there was always that one tale that was told, that was feared, and that had its whispers throughout history. A haunting legend that happened in this very town. And tonight, we're going to see for ourselves if the stories of this legend were true or not. A mixture of excitement and nerves built in the pit of my stomach like a bubbling cauldron as myself, Megan and Max entered the cornfield. We were armed with all we needed to take part in this urban legend: a candle, matches, our pumpkin, and the verses we needed to call out. The cold chill of the night brushed across my cheeks. The eerie silence of the cornfield consumed us as we searched for it. Looking back, the sight of the entrance was long gone as we were now deep inside the pit of the field. Turn after turn, it was like a maze, leading us deeper within its hidden chambers, where he supposedly once stood. The excitement radiated from the others as we all discussed what we thought it looked like. And as we talked about different versions of the story we had heard, it was then Max put his arm out in front of us. Our wandering footsteps stopped in their tracks, as we all froze, looking up to the hovering figure that hung in the moonlight before us. It was actually here. I held my breath as I took in the haunting sight that stood before me. The scarecrow looked nothing like I had imagined. It was larger than I pictured. The torn potato sack infused into its body as clippings of hay crawled from its neck like vines concealing what lay beneath. The dark, lifeless, hollowed eyes stared down at us, the stitches of the mouth torn as they created a haunting frown that looked angered. The worn rope hung tight around the neck as it travelled down its large frame of ripped, tattered clothing as it dangled by its battered boots. The arms outstretched as they rested on their perch, the shadows of its long, overgrown hands looked surprisingly claw-like in the moonlight. The menacing figure of the scarecrow looked more lifelike than we expected. A chilling atmosphere swarmed the area, as although lifeless, it felt as if there was a presence, as if it was indeed watching us. This was his shrine, and this is where he supposedly died that fateful night. Wow, that's creepier than I expected, Max said as he smiled at us. I wonder if this was the actual frame he was hung on, and if those are the actual clothes he wore that night, he continued as Megan inspected the scarecrow. Look, you can see the blood on the clothes. She pointed to the dark, tainted stains that embedded themselves into the torn material. You don't know if that's real. It's probably fake, something someone's put on there, I said, convincing myself it couldn't be real. But this patch here is where he died, Max said. We don't know that. There's acres of land here. It could have happened anywhere, I quipped back. Well, there's only one way to find out. And that's why we're here, isn't it? Max questioned as he looked at us, Megan agreeing with excitement as I nodded apprehensively. Max turned, standing in front of us as he smiled. Now, We have to do this right, and make sure we respect Billy. We've all heard the rumors and the stories of what happened here all those years ago," he said with excitement in his voice. Megan stood, looking up at the haunting scarecrow in all its terrifying glory, before turning back to us. Her smile disappeared from her face, as a serious tone emitted from her voice.
The unfortunate fate of Billy Bryer. As the story goes, Billy was a local boy who was a quiet and lonely boy, often picked on by the bullies of his school. They would tease him for being different, steal his lunch, throw things at him, and embarrass him in front of their peers. But a girl named Wendy, who was in with the popular kids, felt sorry for Billy and wanted to stop the bullying. So, with Halloween around the corner, she invited Billy to a Halloween party. Billy, wanting nothing more than to fit in with the popular kids, was so happy to have been invited. He wanted to make a good impression and just had to find his costume. Finding old, tattered clothes in his house and a battered potato sack, Billy created himself the best scarecrow outfit possible he was sure would impress everyone. When the night of Halloween came, Billy left his house and made his way to the party. On the way, the group who bullied him hadn't taken too kindly to his invite and had planned to ambush Billy. As they watched him leave his house, they followed him until he was alone and there was no one else in sight. As they called out to Billy, their intentions were clear, and they were not good. Chasing Billy, he ran in fear. He ran into an abandoned farmhouse as he made his way into the cornfield trying to hide from the group. But it didn't work. The group followed Billy into the cornfield and eventually found him. They beat him and dragged him deeper into the cornfield until they found the frame of an old worn scarecrow. Removing it from its frame, they placed Billy upon the frame, tying his arms and legs to it, and tying rope around his mouth as he pleaded to be let go. Leaving him there, all alone, cold and injured in the middle of the deserted cornfield. What they didn't know was as they placed Billy upon the frame, a shard of wood that was sticking out had stabbed Billy through the back. In pain and bleeding out, Billy was hung there all night, his muffled cries for help fading into the abandoned night sky, with not a soul hearing his screams. His mother reported him missing the next day after not returning home that night. He was eventually found a day later, but it was too late. Billy bled to death an agonizing and lonely death. As crows feasted on his lifeless corpse, his blood trickling down, seeping into the soiled earth beneath him. They say you could still see the pain and anger burning in Billy's lifeless eyes. The year after, on Halloween, the anniversary of Billy's death, it is said that all the bullies that helped put Billy up there at night were found brutally murdered, one by one with their heads cut off and carved like pumpkins. At first, people thought it was his vengeful mother, killing to avenge her poor Billy. But then there was Wendy, the girl who had invited Billy out that night. She was found in the middle of the cornfield, petrified, out of her mind, as she whispered the words, "On Hallows Eve, when the moon shines bright, he comes out at night. Billy is back and he wants to play. Billy is back and he'll make you pay in the worst possible way. Billy is back." It is said that night Billy returned to kill all those who put him there that night. As for Wendy, it was because of her he was going to the party that night. Although he didn't kill her, he made sure that she would never forget his name, and she was never the same again. Now, it is said that every year on Halloween, if you go to the cornfield where Billy died and find the hanging scarecrow, that if you light a pumpkin at midnight and say the words to the scarecrow, invite Billy to play, then his vengeful spirit possesses the scarecrow, and he comes for you, just like he did the others. And if you manage to escape the night, Billy does not forget, does not give up, and will return for you at midnight the next Halloween, until he finally claims your soul.
As she said the story, a shiver ran down my spine. As much as I believed it was nothing more than a spooky urban legend told over the years, I couldn't help but get an uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach as I stared up at the haunting sight of the scarecrow in front of us. Were we actually about to do this? The sound of a match striking broke the silence as Max held the flickering flame in front of him. Megan opening the pumpkin as its devilish face came to life with an orange glow. We all stood together in front of the scarecrow as midnight struck. My heart beginning to pound as Max began to say the words slowly, followed by Megan, both of them looking at me, willing me to join. I stuttered, trying to find my voice as I finally began to whisper along with them. Tonight is All Hallows Eve, the night your blood ran cold at just 18. But those who wronged you, you made them pay. Their souls now damned still to this day. Halloween is your night. Now we send you this invite. Billy Bryer, Billy Bryer, Billy Bryer. Come out tonight and play. As the words left my mouth, I looked over at the others. The smiles etched across their faces, a stark contrast to mine. I could feel an uncomfortable feeling building up inside of me, compared to the excitement that clearly coursed through the others, their eyes not leaving the scarecrow as they watched intently. I turned back, joining them as my eyes fell upon the scarecrow. Well, there we go. See, it's nothing more than an old spooky urban As Max spoke, the words leaving his mouth cut off, as silence filled the area, the wind ceasing to exist as the towering husks of corn strips that circled us froze. Motionless, as everything seemed to freeze in time, the air sucked from all around us. My heart began to race as I looked at the others, the smile on their faces now missing, replaced by a more concerned look of confusion. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of our own heavy breathing, and the burning of the flame that continued to melt away the insides of the pumpkin that rested in Megan's hands. Exchanging concerned glances between one another, not quite knowing what was happening, it was then all our eyes widened as we all heard it. The sound of someone else breathing. Our heads slowly turned in sync as our eyes fell back upon the haunting scarecrow. Unmoved, still hanging lifelessly on its perch. The sound of breathing now non-existent. Our minds seemingly playing tricks on us. Were we scaring ourselves? Suddenly, a fierce gust of wind tore through the grounds around us as the tall corn strips began to sway ferociously. The sound of thunder rumbled through the sky above us, our hearts racing as we slowly backed up from the seemingly mysterious storm that brewed around us. The fear in Max and Megan's eyes telling as they matched the terror I felt building inside me. As if on cue, the winds stopped. The area again froze all around us. The thunder above us ceased, as once again, silence fell as the flame to the glowing pumpkin went out, leaving us behind in only the dim glow of moonlight. What the fuck just happened? I asked through a shaky voice, as if expecting the answers from the others. The three of us then swiveled our heads round, hearing a frenzied rustling emerge from the tall corn plants around us. Megan squealed as Max and I fought to see what lay behind the darkness of the corn. The rustling stopped as a ball of fear built up in my throat. Taking a second glance, I thought my eyes saw a haunting face in the distance. Looking back, it had gone. The sound of Megan's scream sent my pulse racing as I turned back to see the haunting sight that had crippled Megan and Max with fear. And as I did, I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice, my skin drained of its color. The frame was empty. The scarecrow had gone. My mind unable to explain and comprehend what was going on, I looked at the others. We have to get out of here, now, I stuttered. Not needing a second invite, we all couldn't leave fast enough. As we turned our backs on the empty frame, we all froze in sync. In the darkness of the corn, a haunting, tall silhouette stood motionless in the distance, as it seemingly watched us. It slowly began to move towards us, as we all watched on, hypnotized by fear. The closer it got, the moonlight bared down on it, and just as we feared, this was not just simply another urban legend. The scarecrow was indeed real, and Billy was back. The sound of his footsteps crunching the crisp leaves and soiled earth beneath him was a sobering reality, that we had opened the door to things we didn't understand, and now, Billy was back to play. Meters from us, I turned as I saw Max and Megan bolt in the opposite direction, leaving me trailing in their dust. I soon followed as we ran for our lives, running aimlessly through the acres of field in front of us. Not being able to control myself, I looked back, and to my dreaded fear, the harrowing sight of Billy glided through the corn behind us as he hurtled towards us with a thick stampede of stomping rage. I had tried to keep pace, but with everything a blur, I couldn't see any of the others in front of me. Fearing Billy's claw-like hands were going to grab me at any moment, I broke off from my current direction and fled in another direction. As I ran, I never looked back, fearing he was still following me. Gasping for air, my legs becoming like lead, I couldn't keep up the pace I was going anymore. Slowing, needing to catch my breath, I finally turned to see only the tall, stemmed corn grass behind me. It had worked. I'd outran Billy. Then it hit me. He must have continued following the others. As I composed myself and caught my breath, the sound of rustling once again began to home in on me, my heart pounding, as I backed up from the direction of the sound, fearing this was it. Soon I would be in the clutches of Billy Bryer. Soon that haunting, deathly scarecrow face would emerge from the opening. As the corn rustled, I tried to duck down and hide as a figure burst into view. To my relief, it was Megan and Max. We all embraced a sweaty, shaking mess. I think we lost him. If we keep going this way, then we'll soon be out of... My words were cut off by the agonizing scream that emitted from Max. I looked over in horror as he turned to me and Megan, the undoubtable sight of fear filling his eyes. As blood poured from his stomach, a towering figure emerged from behind him. The terrifying scarecrow Billy had become glared at us as he twisted his sickle into Max's gut, his agonizing screams piercing our ears, as Billy faded back into the darkness, dragging Max with him. All the while his cries for help calling out in the distance. I felt physically sick. The tears streamed down Megan's shell-shocked face. There was nothing we could do. "We can't leave him," she cried to me. "I know, but we need to go get help, or we'll be next, you understand?" Megan nodded. She knew I was right. Listening to his blood-curdling screams, we kept sprinting. Megan's eyes poured with tears, and I felt my own well up, beginning to blur my vision as the screams soon came to an abrupt stop. The moonlit night once again fell silent, as Max's screams were no more. Not soon enough, we finally made it outside of the cornfields, panting as we didn't stop. We couldn't stop. We need to get back and tell someone. But who was going to believe us? This nightmare would sound insane, like a Halloween prank, but we knew it was all too real, and the legend was true. Our weary legs almost giving up on us as a light fog began to descend on the night sky. Out of breath, we finally made it back to my house. As we burst through the door, looking back at the empty, haunting street behind us, fearing we would see him, my heart sank as I realized my house was empty. My parents were both out at a Halloween party. We barricaded ourselves in, locking all the doors and windows behind us. Megan grabbed the landline, calling for the police. I snatched the phone off her as I put it down. What are we going to say to the police? Our friend has been taken and probably been brutally killed by a scarecrow possessed by Billy Bryer, I said, trying to make a point of how that would sound. Megan began to cry. She screamed, asking what we were supposed to do then. I fell silent as I didn't really know myself. I had to think. I had to try and convince my parents. The urban legend, they all know it. We just needed to show them that it was real. As we stood, discussing what our next course of action would be, the lights began to flicker as the house was consumed by darkness. My heart began to race as Megan cowered in the corner. 3 loud knocks shuddered the front door as we both looked at each other in fear. Not one of us said a word as we held our bated breath in fear. Who was at the front door? The sound of a muffled cry seeped through the door. "Guys, please let me in. I lost him. I need help. I'm badly hurt. How could you leave me?" The crying whispers of Max graced our ears. I couldn't believe it. He was alive. He escaped. I looked at Megan as a smile accompanied by a look of relief made its way across her tear-filled face. Amazed but so thankful to know my friend was alive, I ran to the door, my fingers wrapping around the cold metal doorknob, the door creaking open as my eyes met the empty night sky. Travelling down, looking for a wounded Max, my eyes reached my feet. The contents of my stomach began to travel up my throat as I backed up, heaving, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Falling back, the distraught screams of Megan echoed through the house. She, too, saw the macabre sight of what lay in front of us. The decapitated head of Max, carved like a pumpkin as a blood-red glow illuminated from his hollowed-out eyes and mutilated mouth. Smoke seeping from between his lifeless lips as the flame burned away at his flesh. Froze for a moment. This couldn't be real. This horrifying reality had to be a nightmare. But there he was, in the darkness watching as he stalked us. That haunting scarecrow face hovered in the shadows. Billy was here. Megan, unable to take any more as she ran upstairs for dear life. I watched as she disappeared from sight. Scrambling to my feet, I slammed the front door shut, locking it and barricading it with the hallway table. My weary legs slowly backing up, my eyes glued to the door as my scattered, trembling breaths left my mouth in a cold mist of condensation. As the temperature dropped, silence fell. All I could hear was the sound of my heart pounding, dreading that any moment he would break through that door. My eyes closed as an earth-shattering smash imploded, but it wasn't the front door, but instead from upstairs, as the blood-curdling screams of Megan followed it. My eyes released from the front door as I turned, heading for the stairs, screaming Megan's name. Her screams acting like an injection to my soul as the adrenaline kicked into overdrive, coursing through my veins. Racing up the stairs, I burst through my bedroom door to find the explosive aftermath of shards of glass and broken timber scattered all around the room. The torn curtains swaying in the wind. My eyes searching aimlessly through the wreckage. Megan was nowhere to be seen. Running to what was once a window, I peered down. My eyes instantly locked onto a dark silhouette as I fought to see the figure that lay beneath the blanket of fog that consumed the garden. But I soon had my answer, as Megan's cries for help broke through the sheet of mist that concealed her. "Megan!" My hoarse voice screamed as my heart pounded, seeing the sight of another figure joining her as it crawled towards her beneath the fog. I sprinted from the room as I flew down the stairs into the kitchen, sweat pouring down my forehead as I armed myself with the sharpest blade I could find. I stopped just as my hand hovered over the handle to the back door, surveying the area as I controlled my breathing. I couldn't see through the thick clouds of fog that obscured my view, but I knew I had to save Megan. Slowly, my trembling hand steadied as I opened the door, my feet crossing over the threshold as I stepped into the garden. "Megan?" I called, but my calls were met with eerie silence. No longer could I hear her cries for help. As I called, no longer did Megan reply. Cautiously edging forward as my grip tightened around the blade, it was then I saw it. The silhouette of a tall figure hovering in the distance straight ahead of me. I had no choice but to investigate. I had to find Megan. The sound of crunching leaves echoed into the night with every step I took as I moved towards the figure, whispering Megan's name, but still no answer. The beating of my heart surely sounded like a foghorn as I approached the mysterious figure. If it was Billy, I had to fight, but as my eyes broke through the final layers of fog, my view became clear as to what the harrowing sight was that lay before me. My grip loosened on the knife as it fell from my trembling hand. Tears streamed down my face, my voice lost in utter despair. Standing before me was the mutilated, lifeless body of Megan, hung on a frame just like a scarecrow, her pale face covered in blood, her insides spilling out of her gaping stomach as a pool of blood lay beneath my feet. Frozen, unable to take my eyes off her, as the devastation of what I saw crippled me. Hypnotized by the gruesome remains of a friend, I finally broke from my trance-like state as I noticed a dark figure emerge from behind Megan. The towering figure slowly edged towards me. The haunting, glowing eyes peered through the scarecrow mask as Billy, now, came for me. I backed up, instantly running towards the house, slamming the door shut behind me. Billy gaining as he waded through the fog towards me. I had nowhere to run, no one to help me. I couldn't escape him. As his haunting figure reached the back door, all I could do was hide. Pulling open the basement door, I slowly closed the door behind me, locking it from the inside. One by one, my feet back down the stairs, slowly trying not to creep a step and give away my location. I walked backwards, not once taking my eyes off the door, as I could hear the terrifying sounds of Billy entering the house. Holding my breath, my body shaking, the shadow of Billy appeared underneath the door as it moved past and out of sight. A wave of relief washed through me, seeing the sight of him pass the basement door. But as I reached the final step, the unstable old worn beam couldn't help but creak, echoing up the stairs like a blaring alarm. I froze as my eyes closed, praying to God that it wasn't heard. Silence fell as I released my foot. I listened with intent, hoping Billy didn't hear. As the silence consumed the room, you could hear a pin drop. I held my breath as anxiety consumed me. The silence was broken by the loud booming footsteps returning towards the door, as the shadow of Billy once again appeared beneath the door. To my worst fear, he had heard and could now sense me. The door shuddered as loud bangs crashed into the sturdy wood, shaking vigorously as if trying to be ripped open. I hid in the corner, closing my eyes, knowing this was it. That Billy would soon join me, and just like my friends, claim my soul. With each bang, the lock on the door becoming looser, as it slowly gave way. Like a ticking time bomb, I didn't have long left. Bang after bang echoed as my body shook in fear, until suddenly, the banging stopped. As I listened out, I could no longer hear the door ripping from its hinges, but instead, the sound of a car engine. My eyes opened as I looked up to the basement door that was now open. There was no scarecrow, just the moonlight glistening. The sound of 2 cars' doors slamming in the distance. It was my parents. They had returned. Their footsteps approaching the house, stopping in their tracks as the sound of a smashing bottle crashed onto the pavement above me, followed by my mother's blood-curdling scream, echoing into the night. "Jake!" The sound of my dad's terrified voice emitted through the house. They had discovered the horrifying remains of Max's head. Unable to move from where I lay, the moonlight was soon cut out by the dark outline of a figure. As I looked through my bloodshot eyes, it wasn't Billy, it was my dad, with a look of terror embedded in his eyes. The sight of blue and red flashing lights lit up the dark sky as I exited my house, back into the coldness of the night, wrapped in a blanket, as my trembling body convulsed from a mixture of coldness and fear. The scattered police cars surrounded the area, cordoning off the crime scene, escorted by 2 police officers. In my dazed-like state, they sat me in the back of a car. As I looked back out into the street of concerned onlookers, all their eyes were on me. The car slowly moved, their faces passing, until there were no more peering eyes. I looked out into the distance, as a sense of dread came over me, waking me from my trance. I looked out into the distance, as a sense of dread came over me, waking me from my trance, as I saw him in the distance. The haunting sight of Billy, watching me from the shadows of afar. It was then I knew I had escaped this night, but it wasn't over. As there is always next Halloween, as just like the story said, Billy does not give up, does not forget, until he claims your soul. He will return for me, and that is his promise. Hey everyone, The Collector here. We hope you've been enjoying the chilling Halloween season so far. Just want to say a massive thank you to the amazing Danny Dreadful for helping us out and bringing her amazing voice to the channel and bringing life to this creepy urban legend. Go and check out her World of Dread and subscribe for some amazing content. And if you haven't already, hit that red button and subscribe to become a part of the Horror Motives community. You won't regret it. Comment and let us know you're here and what topics you'd like to see soon. And remember, fear lies within.